Number 57.
Jerrell Powe had probably close to 40 offers for scholarships at various universities.
He's one of the few guys that I've coached that I knew that if he could ever get into college and do right, he'd have a chance to make a living playing pro football.
He was a great team leader, very vocal, and not only vocal, but you know, he led by example also.
I love the game of football, you know what I mean? I know this is what I wanted to do in life. This is the way I want to be able to provide for my family. So I just use that as a motivation, you know what I mean, just to continue to strive for what I wanted, you know.
He had a goal set. He wanted to play Division I football. Of course, he had all the tools to do it. He was lacking academically.
I met Joe back around my freshman year in high school. Me and his son was pretty good buddies, and we've been through a lot of stuff together.
Joe is a guy that kind of took Jerrell Powe under his wing, counseled him, gave him some good advice, and kind of helped Jerrell through these tough times.
Jerrell and I became friends, and as his recruitment process started, the absence of his father at home kind of dictated that we have a central gathering point and someone to field phone calls, and he and his mom asked that that be me.
Coach O, he came over and he recruited me pretty hard, and that's when I ended up at Ole Miss. But it was pretty hectic going through the recruiting process because he had a lot of guys coming at you a lot of different ways.
Before he didn't have the grades. He was not a qualifier coming out of high school, but he was a big-time D1 prospect, and he's one of the exceptions where, because he didn't have the grades, those colleges still wanted to sign him, knowing that he was going to have to go to a junior college or a prep school somewhere.
The academic side, the qualification with NCAA was all kind of wild and new to me, you know. What do you mean, you know?
Chinese math may be easier to figure out than the NCAA requirements for eligibility.
NCAA requires a certain GPA combined with an ACT score on what they consider to be core classes.
You know, the NCAA just did not agree with the route that he had taken coursework-wise.
Me and Joe, we talked about it, and Coach Balls, and they came up with a plan, and they heard of Hargrave, and I got into Hargrave because they found out that that's what was getting kids qualified.
Hargrave Military Institute is a college preparatory school that allows athletes who have used up their high school eligibility to go ahead and play a little bit, but more importantly, get a foundation laid academically so that they can be successful at a college.
A lot of people had a lot of stuff to say about me when I was going through my recruiting process. It was a lot of false stuff. I think it took a shot at my mom because there was a lot of false things said about her in the newspaper.
It got twisted around that he couldn't read, that he was illiterate, that Wayne County High School just kept promoting him because he was a good football player. None of that was the case.
What they say, it never bothered me. You know, I mean, I knew what really was going on, and all the stuff they put in the paper was very negative.
And it was a challenge. I know there are times that he wanted to quit.
You know, when I was at Hargrave, he always kept me up when I was getting down, when I would call him at 10, 11 o'clock in the night and just tell him, I don't think I can do this. But I remember that night when I called him.
Jerrell said, everybody talks about what their family does and what their dad does and where they go on vacations and that sort of thing. And he said, I don't have a dad. He said, would you mind if I told them that you were my dad? I said, absolutely not.
Joe Barnett is my father. He's been a father figure to me, and I always will be. He always will be.
When he came out of Hargrave, my understanding was he was academically eligible to go to Ole Miss, and there was 6 or 7 of them that did the same thing and went to different colleges, and I think he was the only one that was ruled ineligible.
The NCAA said, no, some of your correspondence courses, some of the work you did at Hargrave is not going to meet the standards.
That day was probably the darkest day of it all. He wasn't admitted. We had no plan to move forward. and we really didn't know what to do.
So at that time, he took some online classes through BYU and some other places. Again, he was ruled ineligible by the NCAA.
Coming out of high school, I only was told I was going to have to do a year academic work just to be qualified, but it was things changed. I had a long road.
Jerrell Powe did everything that anybody asked him to do.
At that time, they told him he could go to Ole Miss for a year, and if he proved he could do the college classwork at Ole Miss, then he would be ruled eligible. So he did that, and they did rule him eligible the following summer.
We'd look at each other and say, is this it? Did this actually happen today? Is it over with?
My first time when I went through the walking champions, like getting that barrel on my back, you know what I mean? Seemed like I had that barrel on my back for so long, so it was definitely a big relief, you know, just having all the people cheering my name, you know what I mean? So they made me feel really welcome. But if I could do something differently, I probably would have took academics more seriously and probably strive for my goal more seriously than I did in the past.
He did the things that he had to do in order to achieve the goals that he had set. It was a struggle.
And definitely I want to get a degree because I had a lot of doubters. So I think that's one of my long-term goals, to get a degree. This was one of when I caught the interception against Mississippi State last year, so it was one of the proudest days of my life. I didn't get fired. I caught it by 2 or 3 yards, but
I'm gonna tell you, a lot of dark days in between his walking away from that high school and finally getting into Ole Miss. A lot of dark days.
On draft day when I'm in New York, I definitely want my mom and Joe sitting with me.
It's been a hell of a ride, and now the fun begins.